Alright, welcome back to your channel. This is Vitus DK, and together let's witness the evolution. First of all, from command line interface to graphical user interface, which we've seen before, and now the web. So this is the final episode of our Marvel SNAP coding adventure. We're going to deploy our game online with Flask, so don't miss this epic conclusion. Remember, our command line interface version was basic but functional. Then, in the second iteration, we unleashed the power of the GUI with CustomTkinter. Many of our features were made visually stunning, but it's time for us to share our creation with the world, so we're going to use Flask, which is a lightweight, flexible Python framework. We'll use it to build a web application around our game. So in the past, we used it. Check out the previous video. We already built an Avengers word game, guessing game. This time around, we'll follow the same procedure, but we're not making it very flashy. So it's just going to be basic web application. So we start with the foundation, which is the Flask app. Before we do that, we need to create a virtual environment. Now, to create a virtual environment is pretty straightforward. We create a project folder, and then we go to the command line. You can access the command line separately or using your Visual Studio Code IDE or code editor. Once you get to the particular folder, change your directory to your particular folder, project folder. Use the Python command python-m venv and the name of your virtual environment. Pretty straightforward. Python does its magic and creates a separate folder with the name for the virtual environment that you chose. This makes your work separate and avoids conflicts with other packages and modules from other projects. Next, you need to activate this virtual environment simply by calling the activate script within your scripts. It goes ahead and does its magic, activates your virtual environment. Within that virtual environment, you now get to install Flask. Once again, it does its magic using pip to install Flask, and now you have the Flask module or package in your environment. We can now go ahead to build our app, the Flask Web App, simply by importing Flask. You can import everything within Flask, or you can use from Flask and import the particular modules from your package. Once we got our virtual environment situated, got our Flask module and packages installed, then we can go ahead and create an instance of the Flask class, and then we define a route, the URL that will trigger our game logic. In this case, it's a root URL, meaning the game will be accessed at the root of our web application. Next, we create our HTML templates. This is where the magic happens. Now, within our index.html template, we need to create a title within the head section, and within the body section, we'll go ahead and create 3 separate sections. The header, where we're going to enter the title of the page, as well as the navigation for later on. The body also includes the main section, where we're going to break it down to 3 other sections. I like doing it so we have a top, mid and bottom section, just for aesthetics and for organizational purposes. The bottom part has a footer where you can have your copyright and other social media links. Now we can proceed to design the user interface. designed the user interface with forms for the character input, the revival character. It was a slider this time around. We'll just have a number picker, and of course, the most important, the snap button. So notice the form elements, which is what we're going to use to capture the user input and also send it back to our Flask application for processing. And also check out the clever trick that we use to make sure that we can pick numbers and we don't allow inputs that are invalid. So back in our Python code, we handle the form submissions such that when the user clicks the snap button, we process the inputs, run our logic, the game logic that is, and render the results page. Clever, right? So we make our game dynamic in that way. So just like the index.html template in the results.html template, we go ahead and give the web page a title in the head section, and our body has those three sections: header, main, and footer. Within the main section, we have multiple sections as well. We go ahead and input the contents in the mid section. Again, contents could include stuff like the H2 level 2 heading, where we're going to enter the Marvel SNAP information that we want to output after the snap. We can also duplicate this and make it uniform so that we can have the same header size for after revivals, and include some subheadings like the list of survivors and the list of revived characters as well. Now let's run our app and see what it looks like on the web browser. Neat. So we have our input fields looking good so far, but it appears the step is a little bit too small. Instead of 0.1 we have 0.01. So let's fix that and double check that everything else looks good. And yeah, looks good. Now let's jump back into the app.py where we have our game logic. In this case, we already know the HTML looks good, so let's update the logic so that we get the string from the character input that we just created, which we saw, and we also get the revival chance, which is also coming from that input field, but we need to convert it into a float. So converting it to a float and assigning it to the revival underscore chance variable. Now other variables that we're going to need will be our survivors. But wait, where do we get the survivors from? We need a snap function, which we have already created in our past videos. So let's switch back to the folder where we have our projects and just copy the code that we had from the command line interface and the graphical user interface, CLI and GUI, and paste them in our current folder. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We're just going to call these functions, but before calling them we need to import those functions from that file that we just copied over. So from the Marvel SNAP Python file, we should be able to import the snap and the revival functions. So again, the snap will be able to randomly get characters from there, assign it to survivors. Vanish is going to get a difference of our survivors from the characters, and revive is also going to call the function we looked at before. Now we can return a template, so we get to render a template. We call that template result.html, which we already have, and pass the survivors, the vanished, and the revived characters. Now all of that happens when we have the request.post method. So we have an else block that runs. That means it opens up our index page when we are not posting, with the form. So double checking everything so far, you notice that our route, we need to make sure that we accommodate for the get method and the post method of HTML forms. Now let's run or test our app and make sure that everything is looking good. Again, the index page looks good. But we need to get a list of our Avengers. I think I saw the list of our Avengers somewhere. Let's go look for it. Sorry, it's gonna be a little bit busy. Aha, there we found it in our previous Word game, and we can copy it into our input box and error message. So let's address the first error. It appears that the character split is not working. So let's try to debug what the issue is. Going to line 9, we see that the character is singular. It should be plural. And also we are using parentheses instead of square brackets to give the name of our input boxes. So let's make those changes, and you notice that in the results.html template we did not complete our code. So we passed the survivors, but we have outcome, which was a placeholder. So let's rename it appropriately. We have survivors, vanished, and revived characters. So we're going to have survivors in there, and we can duplicate that and also have vanished to make sure that we print out both those who survived and those who vanished from the list of our characters that we entered. Now we use Ginger templating to be able to create a for loop that's going to look through all our survivors, because the survivors is a list, and then prints them out. Pretty much the same thing should be done for the vanished characters and also for our revived characters. But for the revived characters, we need to make sure we call the correct name, which is revived characters and not just revive. So yeah, that means our result file looks good. Let's add a horizontal rule to separate our survivors from revivers. So paste in content again and test out our product. Looks like we still have another error. Oh yes, we did mention earlier that we should be calling the label and the input characters, but in our app we're calling it character singular. So let's add an S. Make sure those typos, you avoid them, don't be like me. Alright, so we need to kill our session. Once the session is killed, we rerun it and then try to follow our link, input our values, and we still get an error. This time around our error is, oh, we don't need a get. method in here. We just need to call or get our inputs from calling the request.form method. And let's try it one more time. So again, you just have to be patient, making sure you identify each of your errors. That's why you have to test for semantic and syntactic errors. As you can see now, we're calling our template result. It should be results, plural. And voila, that should be it. So there you have it. You have a Marvel SNAP game that is now fully fledged web application. It's accessible to anyone on the internet connection. We just have to go ahead and deploy it using one of the many deployment options. Check it out, and then you should be able to deploy this seamlessly on Heroku, Render, AWS, Google, and so on and so forth. This concludes our 3-part Marvel SNAP coding adventure. I hope you enjoyed it. This journey has been a wonderful one. I did enjoy it. And if you're new here, please hit the subscribe button and don't forget to like this video. And if you haven't already, check out the previous parts of the series, the command line interface and the GUI version in the links below in our descriptions. So keep coding, keep creating, and unleash your inner developer. Thanks for watching. Catch you on the next video.